James Gunn's Superman has been out for over a month and has given a much needed resurgence to the iconic character. Superman first appeared in Action Comics issue number 1 and has had many iconic renditions on the character since that point. The newest rendition, unsurprisingly, being divisive amongst fans and the internet. However, most of the reception for this new take has been relatively positive, as it's a return to form for the iconic, hopeful figure that he's supposed to be. Also, refreshing to not get another injustice/evil Superman. Many drawing comparisons to the iconic Christopher Reeves rendition, especially with the John Williams inspired score. Tragically, Terence Stamp, the actor who played as General Zod in Superman 2, passed away August 17th of this year. So in memory of such an iconic character, let's look back at Superman 2 and remember this film for what it was at the time, to pay tribute to what came before over 40 years ago. The story. Before the destruction of Krypton, General Zod, Ursa, and Non are criminals banished to the Phantom Zone moments before the destruction of their home world. Kal-El is sent to Earth, and in the previous film announces himself to the world as Superman, saving many lives from the diabolical plan devised by criminal mastermind Lex Luthor. However, in foiling Luthor's plans, Superman accidentally releases Zod from the Phantom Zone as their next agenda is to conquer planet Earth. Meanwhile, Lois Lane begins to suspect that Superman and Clark Kent are the same person and is determined to find the truth. Superman contemplates revealing his identity to Lois as he's not sure if this would endanger her. While Clark and Lois are reporting a story in Niagara Falls, Clark accidentally reveals himself to be Superman, and the two truly open up to one another. Superman takes Lois to the Fortress of Solitude and shows his heritage to her and declares his love for the woman. After consulting with his AI parents, he has his powers removed to become a human and permanently be with Lois Lane. Zod invades the White House as they're all gifted abilities from the Yellow Sun and challenge Superman to stop them. Clark and Lois visit a bar and Clark gets brutally beaten trying to defend Lois Lane from a truck driver who is harassing her. Clark realizes he's made a terrible mistake when he sees General Zod on the TV invading the White House, and he returns to the Fortress of Solitude to retrieve his powers. Meanwhile, Lex Luthor breaks out of prison and finds the fortress, learning of Superman's heritage and of General Zod. He tries to team up with Zod, and Superman confronts all of them in Metropolis. After a thrilling fight, Superman determines that to avoid casualties, he must fight somewhere unoccupied, uninhabited, like the fortress. Superman attempts to have Lex trick the three of them into getting into the chamber to remove their powers, but Luthor betrays him, having him go in himself. However, Superman predicted this and reversed the use of the chamber to be on the outside instead of the inside, defeating all the villains and returning Luthor to jail. The following day, Clark kisses Lois to make her forget that he's Superman, as well as all of the events that have transpired over the last couple of days. And yes, I'm aware there are two cuts of this film, but after watching both versions, we're sticking with the theatrical cut. The Donner cut is very insightful, but very incoherent, and is a messier film than the more streamlined version released in theaters. We'll still discuss the differences though. Christopher Reeve as Superman. After watching these films with more knowledge of the character, I still think Reeves has not been surpassed yet on the big screen. I adore how he plays both Clark Kent and Superman. It's not just the glasses that make the disguise, but the body language, the voice. He truly transforms based on how he is in the moment. Confident and strong as Superman and quirky and nervous as Clark Kent. Hunchback as Clark, shoulders back, straight chest with Superman. Far more believable than other interpretations that we get nowadays. Sorry, Henry Cavill. I even like the suit now more than I did when I was a kid. This is a perfect translation from the comics and is really well adapted. Since this is a sequel, it feels like they don't have to spend as much time with setup for the character and highlight more of the flaws that he has in the film. Many of the issues reminding me of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, where he gives up his powers in selfish pursuit of humanity and a relationship with someone he cares about. And you can tell that Superman 2 really did lay the groundwork for what Spider-Man 2 would do with some plot lines in the future as well, if you really look at it closely. Lois Lane. I might get a lot of hate for this, and hear me out, but I never liked this Lois in the old Superman films. To me, she was very much a Mary Jane of these films, a very selfish character who doesn't care about the alter ego but is infatuated with the superhero. Which is unfortunate because I think that Margot Kidder does a fantastic job playing the character and does feel right for the role, but I just don't think that they wrote the romance very well, as it can feel a bit shallow. For example, when Clark steps into the chamber and gives up his powers, you can tell she's immediately not into him at all and treats him the same way she would with Clark.
I think maybe we ought to hire a bodyguard from now on.
I don't want a bodyguard. I want the man I fell in love with.
I know that, Lois. I wish you were here.
Seemingly only liking him for being Superman with his powers and abilities. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. General Zod. Now, this is what I've been looking to talk about the most in this video essay. Terence Stamp is an excellent General Zod. You can tell that he's a planet conqueror and he is very militaristic in his approach to decisions and how he handles many situations. Also maintaining a level of menace that is needed in a villain. I wish the same could be said for his costume choice, but I'm gonna let it slide because his performance was really good. It's also a very awesome detail that when the three villains arrive on planet Earth, you can kind of tell that they're analyzing different situations. Like how the infrastructure of the world works, or how they notice that there's things like helicopters, or they're seeing cars for the first times, or even seeing things like shotguns. They're looking at all these things like they're foreign, and they're fascinated by that. And it gives the villains more character, especially with General Zod being a huge analyst. And he has many great moments throughout the film where you can tell he's just analyzing things about Earth that just are not there on Krypton. Although it was kind of weird that they did have a moment where you see his right hand get bitten by a snake and then she's somehow affected by that. I don't think that's going to affect Kryptonians, but whatever. However, with how great he is in the film, he doesn't have a lot of depth. Something that's fixed later in 2013's Man of Steel. It's more of the performance that works in the film and carries his villain. This also leads into the action between all of the characters. These fights were revolutionary at the time, and sure, Man of Steel may have done these fights better in the future, but for the time that this was released, they nailed the fights between the super beings. Heat vision, ice breath, super strength, environmental destruction, all great stuff. Though lots of confusing moments, like why do the Kryptonians have telekinesis abilities, or the ability to throw Laffy Taffy off his chest and entangle Zod, which again, it's some of the weird powers and abilities that Superman had around this time period. If you look at a lot of the comic books, he was able to do a lot of weird things too, like move planets, create many versions of himself, metamorphosize his face, have weird hypno glasses. It's just a lot of those Superman abilities that really didn't make me a fan of the character back then, and they kind of throw a little bit of that in this film as well. But it never fully affected the film for me because I still think it's a very solid continuation of what worked in the prior film. and it's not so over the top where it really affects the film. But I'm just saying, for me personally, Superman has base powers: heat vision, invulnerability, super strength, flight, speed, super hearing, ice breath. Not really Frisbee logos.
In Superman 2, what is the story with that cellophane S that Superman rips off his chest and throws at the bad guy?
Prepare to be destroyed, Superman. What was that?
Yeah, take that, you jerk.
That was a minor inconvenience.
Now to talk about the weird in the film. I think all the weird to me is really all the stuff where you can tell we're either reshot or the Donner comparisons. The Lois Lane storyline where she's trying to discover Clark Kent's identity. There's two different versions of that where you have Lois Lane trying to jump out a window, which I thought is insane. Like, what if she was wrong? I'm also not a big fan of how they kind of made her seem kind of like she was psychotic as she was trying to discover the identity. To a lot of people it's fun and innocent enough, but to me it just seems a bit weird. I also like how it's two comparisons in the cuts of the film, right? Where you have the discovery of Superman's identity being two entirely different things. Where in the theatrical you have Superman tripping over the rug and then his hand landing on a fire, and she discovers he's Superman that way. Whereas in the Donner cut, you have Lois Lane essentially shooting a blank at him. He pokes his chest out, which I thought was also a great moment. Which one you prefer is really up to you. I do think one thing that might have been an improvement was maybe the scene where you have Clark Kent getting his powers back and you actually got to see how he does it in the Donner cut. Whereas in the theatrical cut, he goes back to the fortress and then he just comes back as Superman. You just don't know how. In the Donner cut, the Father AI system gives, I guess it's life force energy into Clark that makes him back to Superman or something like that, which sure, I guess. But the thing that I really didn't like about Superman 2, and I do like the movie a lot, it's just that I think the ending is very weak and very much contradicts the rest of the film. The film had all these major events happen, but both of the films kind of end in a way that kind of makes everything seem kind of inconsequential, unlike the first movie, where you have Superman doing a magical kiss to erase Lois Lane's memory, which I thought was kind of creepy. But in the theatrical, you have Superman flying around the world again, breaking the rules, changing time, and making sure that they never showed up on Earth, which both make both versions inconsequential. As a matter of fact, if you look at the Donner cut, it's actually a little bit worse, because there was that scene with the truck driver that he fought, and after Superman flies back in time, that means he never would have met that truck driver, so it really just seems like he's beating up the truck driver for no reason in that scene. And the Donner cut just really makes a lot of the scenes cut feel very inconsistent. If I was going to do a recut, I would not have included some scenes in there, as the continuity would have been broken. In conclusion, I can say that Superman 2, to me, with all of its faults, it has a lot of great moments throughout, and Terence Stamp was a fantastic General Zod. I do like the villains in the movie. I think that this plotline is very solid, and you can see where it laid the groundwork for future superhero movies in the future. And it's just an overall solid, fun superhero movie. And it's one of those rare sequels where you can argue a case where it's almost as good as the first one.